Hey everybody, welcome back to the Horror Trans podcast. My name is Stephanie Bree. I am a transgender woman and I talk about all things horror. And I got quite a few topics today. So, um, it's Monday, January 29. I got some no updates really on the channel other than I'm going to be doing 6 movies a week instead of 4 for reviews. I don't have enough on my list to go back to doing 10 a week because I'll run out of movies again. But I feel like I've got plenty to get through. That just doing 2 at a time just didn't feel like I was doing enough. So I got 3 movies coming this weekend. Those reviews are done. They're going to upload just before this video does. So they'll be ready to watch by the time you're watching this. I watched 3 horror movies last week. The first one I've already done a review on. It's Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. That review is coming. That will be up. That is one of the reviews that will be up before this video. The second one I watched live here on my channel. You can go back and rewatch my reaction to that movie if you want to watch me have a panic attack on camera. I watched Hereditary, which shot up to my #1 scariest movie I've ever seen of all time 30 minutes into the fucking movie. I still haven't recovered from watching Hereditary, and I don't know if I ever will. And I watched, I don't know, 30 minutes or thereabouts of Destroy All Neighbors and turned it off in rage because that movie's so fucking dumb I couldn't finish it. Uh, you know, I don't know why, like, 80s cheesy usually doesn't bother me so much. I can handle it to a degree. There's a lot of shit from the 80s I can't handle. I've talked about some of them on this channel. I don't like it when you blend horror and comedy unless you're going to do it well. Meaning, I don't mind having, like, comic relief in my horror movies, but I want to be able to take my horror movies seriously. Unless it's a pure comedy with a horror setting, like Ghostbusters or Beetlejuice or something like that, then I'm good. But when you're trying to make a horror movie, but you're focusing too much on the comedy, I lose interest. So I'm not a fan of comedy, like in general. So I just lose interest, especially if it's stupid. You know, if you're going for low bar comedy, I'm just like, I'm out. I'm tapping out. I'm done. And Destroy All Neighbors was stupid. It wasn't even entertaining. It did nothing for 30 minutes. I was like, when the fuck is the movie going to start? And that's too long. You get 15 minutes. If it takes you 30 minutes and the movie still hasn't started, fuck you. I'm done. I'm tapping out. Because either your movie's never going to start, if it's a 90-minute movie, or it's going to start late and it's a fucking 2.5 hour movie, which is too goddamn long. Especially for a horror movie. 86 minutes is the sweet spot for a horror movie. So, I'm not saying I can't watch longer horror movies, but something better be happening within the first 5 minutes if your movie's over 2 hours, is all I'm saying. So I will be reviewing Hereditary in the near future. And I don't know if I'll review Destroy All Monsters because, to be fair, I didn't finish it. And I don't want to give you an unfair review. So I'm just going to tell you right now, I didn't fucking finish it. So there's a high probability I never review that fucking piece of rubbish. Because I already have a low opinion of it. So I haven't really watched anything else. I did watch Jurassic Park for the Patreon last week, so if you haven't checked that out, go sign up for Patreon. I'm going to go ahead and open up some news sites and see if there's any horror news or rumors worth mentioning. I'll tell you the sites if I read an article, I'll tell you where I'm reading it from. So I just got to open a few tabs here and check out what's happening in the horror news world, if there's anything interesting or not. So we'll start with Bloody Disgusting. Let's see. Anything happening? Diablo Cody wants to make a sequel to Jennifer's Body. Please don't. I don't think there's any that movie doesn't deserve a sequel. That movie needs to be forgotten. I do want to talk about Godzilla -1 releasing in black and white. I think this is interesting. I know the original Godzilla movie from 1956 or whatever was black and white, so this is kind of a throwback to that. I haven't seen Godzilla -1 yet, but I can assure you I will not be watching it in black and white. I will be watching it in full color. Let's see. I'm not seeing anything else newsworthy on Bloody Disgusting. So let's check out Horror News Net. See if they have anything. Nope, this website scrolls funky. I can't read it. Sorry. It doesn't have smooth scrolling. It just jumps, and I don't like that. So now let's take a look at Dread Central. Looks like some reviews and stuff that I'm not going to rip off because they're their own site. California mother discovers plastic wrapped corpse in her son's bedroom. Horror in real life. That doesn't sound like something I want to read, but if you want to, that's at dreadcentral.com. Here's one from the Hollywood Reporter I think is fascinating. Blumhouse is launching a horror exhibit at the Shining Hotel in Colorado. It says Stephen King stayed at the Stanley Hotel before he wrote his book from 1977. It says Blumhouse will curate the 10,000 square foot Stanley Film Center exhibit space in collaboration with the Colorado Office of Film, Television, and Media. The exhibit is described, according to the Hollywood Reporter, as a mini Academy museum dedicated to horror and will draw from Blumhouse's catalog of film, TV, and game offerings. So that sounds interesting. Blumhouse does some pretty wicked shit. So I'll give them that. This sounds like something. This sounds like an attraction I would consider going to, if I were ever in the financial situation to be able to take a vacation. All right, cancel. All right, so according to Joe Blow, let's see if they have anything interesting. Thanksgiving is coming to theaters this weekend, so if you missed your chance to see it, now is a second chance. So that sounds interesting. According to Joe Blow, Walter Peck will make an appearance in Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. I'm curious how they're going to handle this. It sounds like this is going to be another, Nostalgia Trip 2.0, but I'm down for it. Afterlife was a damn good movie, even though it was nothing but a nostalgia trip. Danielle Harris is considering coming back for more Halloween movies. That's pretty cool. They killed her character in Curse of Michael Myers. But considering that they don't give a fuck about the timeline and they like to do their own thing, I think it would be cool to continue that timeline, because Halloween 4 is my favorite Halloween movie in the entire fucking franchise. And Jamie Lloyd is one of the reasons why I love Halloween 4. She was a really cool character, and I'm really pissed off how they killed her, and then just dropped her like a fucking sack of potatoes and said, "Never mind, you didn't exist." According to Joe Blow, Hayden Panettiere calls the firing of Melissa Barrera from Scream 7 very unfair and upsetting. I wonder if Hayden Panettiere will be back for Scream 7 or not. It sounds like Scream 7 is kind of not happening at this point. It's going to be a reboot or a requel or remake or something. It looks like Basket Case is getting a 4K release. That's a fun piece of horror history. And The Walking Dead won't fucking die, and I'm fucking over it. I'm fucking over it. Fuck The Walking Dead. God damn it. Alright, let's see what iHorror has for us. The Return of Steamboat Willie horror film releases teaser trailer. Okay. That looks interesting. I might watch that. I might do a reaction video. I haven't done too many of those. The Lost Boys is being reimagined as a musical. That looks cool. Especially if they bring back Saxophone Man. Fuck yeah. Everybody jerked off to Saxophone Man. Don't lie, you know you did. Male, female, and everybody else. We all did. He was the hottest fucking thing to ever grace film. Alright, I don't see anything else from iHorror. Horror Buzz, anything happening here? This looks like, nope. Alright, that's everything I could find for news, for the news and rumors segment. Not nothing too interesting right now. It's January, so movie studios are still keeping things under lids right now. What they got coming on, and most of the good horror stuff will come out in usually April, July, and October. So we don't have really anything to look forward to in the near immediate future, I don't think. I'm still looking forward to Ghostbusters. I'm not gonna lie, but I don't know if I'm gonna see it in theaters. But that's just because I only watched one movie in theaters last year, and that was Barbie. And as much as I loved Barbie, I did not love going to the theater. I'm 41. You know, I have a broken foot. I walk with a cane. I don't. It's a permanently broken foot. It'll never heal, and I didn't have the money for the surgery. So I walk with a cane, and I have a crack in my foot. So going to the theater, going anywhere is unpleasant for me. I don't even go to the grocery store. I order my groceries through delivery services. So I don't like to leave the house except for to go to work. And that I have to do because, got to pay bills. And I happen to have one of those jobs you can't work from home. All right. So my first topic I have opinions on, but not very strong opinions. And it's splatter horror. So splatter horror is kind of similar, has similarities to the slasher genre. Only splatter focuses more on the gore than the story. Although they can have interesting stories. I'm still trying to figure out what's the difference between splatter and giallo. Most of the examples I read online of splatter films, a lot of them were giallo films. Some of them were slasher films. The rest were torture porn. And so I think torture porn is a modern move, cat. I don't know what move. I don't know what are you doing. Move. I think torture porn has replaced splatter in the horror vernacular. So I think splatter films would today be called torture porn. I think this would be like Saw and the Hostel franchise are the big ones. I've seen a handful of Saw movies, 3 of them at least. No cap. And I've only seen the first 2 Hostels. I have seen a handful of giallos. Most of the ones I've seen I've already reviewed on my channel because I am a tremendous fan of Dario Argento. With the exception being Suspiria, I've enjoyed everything else he has done, produced, or directed. My favorite is The Church, followed by Phenomena. I also really enjoy the Demons franchise. Or at least the first 2 Demons movies. I haven't seen the third one yet. But I couldn't do Suspiria. When it got to the scene with the maggots, I tapped out. That was too much for me. So I've never finished Suspiria, and I put it on my list of movies I'll never review. Sorry. I did review it, but I gave it a shit. I just shat on it and said I ain't finishing it. So that's not like a proper review. I'm not. Now, let's talk about Saw, because that's the poster child of the splatter franchise. Or subgenre, excuse me. Saw is too much for me. I'm going to be honest. I've seen the first 3 Saw movies, but it took me 6 months to do so. And I have the whole collection. I own it all on DVD and digital. I own it on Vudu. I bought the bundle. I don't have every one of them because they've released like 3 movies since I bought the bundle, but I have every movie up to that point. So I have the first like 6 Saw movies. So I guess there's 4 more and a spinoff since then, maybe. I haven't seen those. I haven't seen them all. So while I do find Saw interesting as a franchise, my problem with Saw is it's too heavy. It's too hard. So I have to space them out. Same thing happened with Hostel. Look, I love gore and I love like slasher movies especially. I love decapitations and dismemberments and whatnot, guttings, cutthroats, all that good stuff. But the Saw movies, for me, I think they just go too far. Kind of like Human Centipede went too far. But I would not put Human Centipede under the splatter category. I put that under the what the fuck category. Maybe psychological horror? I don't know. It fucked me up, anyways. And I'm already pretty fucked up. From looking at the list on Wikipedia of what people consider splatter films, I haven't seen very many of them, but a lot of the ones that I have seen are movies that I did not enjoy because I'm not a fan of that. I'm also not a fan of body horror, which might be what you put Human Centipede under, maybe. I don't know. I don't mind. I definitely don't. I don't mind gore, but I don't like gross out gore. So like, there's a point where gore is like okay for me, pretty cool for me, and then if you cross that point, you reach the that's too far. And all of the Saw movies I've seen were too far. And I would say both of the Hostel movies that I have seen were too far. The other one that I think I would consider splatter, I didn't see it on the list, but from what I saw of it, was Turistas, and that movie wasn't very enjoyable. That movie was just like, hey, we're gonna open people's bodies and fuck with them, and I was just like, nope, not for me. So as far as splatter goes, this is one genre I won't go so far as to say I avoid necessarily, but it's not like one that I prioritize. I'm still gonna try to slog through these Saw movies just because I do enjoy them. They're good movies, and I do own 6 of them. They're just too much to get through all at once. I got to take my time. Now, I wanna ask a question because I'm curious what other people think. Do you consider the Hellraiser franchise a splatter franchise? Because there's a lot of bloodshed in those movies. I've heard some people describe them as body horror. I've only seen the first 5 the first 5 Hellraisers and the remake. Those are the only ones I've seen. Um, and I would say they're pretty freaking gory, and I would not put them under the slasher camp. So I'm inclined to say, yeah, they're almost torture porn. They're almost splatter films, I guess. Um, you could make a case that they're also body horror, of course, but I think you can make that case with any splatter movie, really. Um, which might be why I don't enjoy them that much. I don't know. I usually want quick kills, like cut their head off and then move on. I don't want to I don't want to sit and watch you saw their head off with a butter knife. I don't need to see that. If it takes you 3 minutes to dismember a body, that's too much. I've seen too much. I'm tapping out. I want quick kills, just like, a splash of blood and move on. That's what I want. That's why I prefer the slasher genre, I think, because the kills are pretty quick. Sometimes you don't see enough in the slasher movies because, they're fighting for that R rating. Sometimes you see just enough. I wouldn't say I've ever seen a slasher movie that showed me too much. I don't think. But I've seen some some splatter films that have showed me too much, especially the Saw movies. Especially Saw 3. One of the reasons why I haven't gotten past Saw 3 is because Saw 3 was too much for me. So, I haven't been in a big hurry to see Saw 4. Because I assume each movie has to top the previous film. And if Saw 4 is going to be worse than Saw 3, I'm not in a hurry to see Saw 4. Same reason why I haven't watched Hostel Part 3 yet. Because, the first 2 were like, whoa, I don't know how I feel about this. I don't know if I'm in a hurry to see the next one. I just got a text message. I just have to make sure it's not work. Because sometimes they call me in. Alright, moving on. Horror comics. Now, I was going through my comics collection recently, and I realized I don't have a lot of horror comics. I do have some Dawn I have a Dawn trade paperback and a couple of singles. I love Dawn, and I have the Dawn versus or meets Vampirilla trade paperback. So I went on eBay and I bought some horror graphic novels and trade paperbacks, about 3 or 4 of them. But for the most part, I haven't really read that many straight up horror comics. I don't own it, but I have read the Archie Comics zombie zombie stories and the werewolf stories, and I've read The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, and I've seen the TV series on Netflix. I do enjoy Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the TV show. I've never read any Buffy comics, but that's on my list. I may pick up a couple TPBs or a graphic novel or two here or there. I mostly read science fiction, fantasy, and superhero comics, to tell you the truth. But I do enjoy horror comics. It's just a lot of horror comics to me. A lot of them come in, from what I've seen, they come in like 3 varieties. So you get a lot of anthology type stories. You get a lot of horror comics where there's no narrative. It's just like each issue or volume is its own thing. And I am not a fan of anthologies. I want a narrative. I don't need like a fully fleshed out plot, but I still want something that I can get into. Like a world or a universe or characters I can follow. You know what I mean? So I tend to not be a fan of anthologies in general, especially movies. I'm not a fan of anthology movies. I've seen a couple that I liked, but by and large, I just don't enjoy the short story format. The second type of horror comic I've seen a lot of are like twisted fairy tales or twisted stories. They'll take something that already exists, like a superhero comic or a fairy tale or like a Star Wars or something, and turn it into horror. Like I talked about the Archie comic. That is an example of that. It's the Archie Riverdale universe reimagined as a zombie apocalypse or a werewolf story or etc. I enjoy those a little bit more because I'm already familiar with the characters and the world, and it's kind of nice to see an alternate universe. The third example of horror comics is the horror in other genres. So this would be like a superhero comic that has a horror character that occasionally does a horror type story. So Batman has some horror characters, like the Scarecrow I consider a horror character. I think I would consider Clayface a horror character. So any story that's going to feature Clayface or the Scarecrow has the potential to be a horror story. On the Spider-Man side of things, you have Morbius and you have Venom and Carnage. I think most stories that feature Venom or Carnage or Morbius, those 3 characters, tend to be more horror-like. I haven't read any horror in Superman, so I don't have anything to compare to. But I do like when traditional comics explore horror. I did a video recently on my issues with Doctor Who, and I want to put this out there. The very first episode I ever saw of Doctor Who was The Empty Child, and the immediate follow-up, the Doctor Dances. So I had this impression that Doctor Who was a horror TV show, a horror sci-fi. And then I jumped into Torchwood. And Torchwood is definitely horror. So I was under the impression that Doctor Who was a horror show. And I started watching it and I was like, wait a minute, where the fuck is the horror? So I was let down immediately. Now there are occasional horror episodes. The Impossible Planet, I think, is a good example. The Weeping Angels is a damn good example. Probably the best horror TV episode I've ever seen of any horror TV is The Weeping Angel. That's a straight up horror movie, dressed up in Doctor Who clothes. So comics do this as well. So sometimes they'll have a special, like a Halloween issue or an October issue, where they'll, TV shows do this too. The sitcoms and stuff. They do the Halloween episode, the special horror episode. I don't mind this too much. Now, sometimes you have like dedicated horror comics that are based on horror franchises like Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Alien, Predator, etc. That they tend to focus on horror for the most part, but occasionally they stray into weirdness, like as comic books do. I did read the Nightmare on Elm Street comics, the whole run. I don't remember who did it. I think it was IDW, but don't quote me on that because I'm not 100%. I read it a long time ago. It was interesting. It wasn't great, but it was like, oh, cool, a Freddy Krueger comic. I'm down for this. I like horror comics to an extent, especially if it's got a good story that I can get into. But I prefer my horror to come at me in movie form. I do not like horror video games that much. There's a few I do like. I've already talked about some of them in previous episodes of this podcast. But by and large, I prefer my horror to be movie format. I can get into a horror TV show, but it's not easy for me these days. But comics are a whole beast. Now, there's a whole world of horror comics out there I've never explored. I've never read any of the EC comics. I've never read any of the Tales from the Crypt comics. I have only read the Dawn Meets Vampirella trade paperback, so I haven't read any Vampirella comics. I've never read anything with Blade, or is it Morbius or Morbius? I've never read any issues with Morbius in them. I've never read Spawn. I don't know if Spawn would interest me or not. Or Hellboy. I've seen the Hellboy movie. It did not interest me. So I don't know if the comic is better than the movie or not. It just didn't really catch my interest. I feel like horror comics don't get the recognition that sci-fi and superhero comics get. I feel like superhero dominates, and then sci-fi is sort of, number two. And then everything else is just like fighting for number three, and that includes horror. I do really love Dawn, though. Dawn is one of my favorite comic book characters. And her stuff is absolutely horror, especially Cry for Dawn. But again, Cry for Dawn is anthology, which I've already talked about. So, yeah. Also, Cry for Dawn is damn near impossible to find these days. So, you might have to sail the high seas if you want to read it, if you know what I mean. The next topic I have, I'm not going to spend too much time on. It's Friday the 13th, the series. So, Friday the 13th was a popular slasher franchise in the 80s. And the filmmakers in the studio wanted to cash in on that because Freddy Krueger already had a TV show, Freddy's Nightmares. And so they created Friday the 13th, the series, which has nothing to do with Friday the 13th at all. Friday the 13th, the series, is kind of an X-Files type show where you have investigators that are investigating things, and my stupid cat wants to be on camera again, and I gotta push him down because he's gonna sit on my mouse, because that's what he does. Get down. Get down! You're sitting on my mouse, damn it! Stupid ass. I remember watching Friday the 13th, the series, when I was a kid, and I remember hating it. Not because it was, like, wasn't scary or anything. I do remember thinking they were scary episodes. But I didn't enjoy it for two reasons. One, Jason wasn't in it. It had nothing to do with the Crystal Lake at all. So I was like, what the fuck is this? Why are you calling it Friday the 13th? This is not Friday the 13th. Fuck off. The other reason I didn't enjoy it is because, like I've said previously, by and large, I am not a fan of anthologies. I can enjoy some. I did like Are You Afraid of the Dark when I was a kid. And I'll talk about Tales from the Crypt in a future episode. But Friday the 13th, this series felt more like a murder mystery than a horror show. And I'm not a fan of murder mysteries by and large. So I don't really have a whole lot to say about this series other than it might be worth revisiting at some point, you know, to see if maybe I've changed my mind on it. I'm sure you can find it if you look hard enough. I don't know where, but, you know, you can do your own Googling. I can't be bothered because I'm not interested in it. I don't need to revisit it. So I don't really know what else to say. Not much of a topic. I apologize. It's one of those TV shows I knew I had to talk about at some point. But really, outside of what... there's a really good Crystal Lake Memories documentary. I think you can find it on, like, Shudder. That does touch on the series a little bit. I just don't have any interest in it. I know they're trying to make a new Friday the 13th TV series that actually will take place at Crystal Lake and feature Jason, perhaps, possibly. That I'm more interested in. That I'll definitely consider checking out, good or bad. We'll see. Moving on. I've already done Horror Icons video on vampires. But I want to talk about vampires anyways, because they're on my list. Stupid cat, get out of the way. Vampires are a staple in the horror genre and horror community. I've already talked about a couple of vampires in this episode. I've mentioned Morbius. I've mentioned Blade. In fact, one of the first horror movies ever, Bram Stoker's Dracula from 1934, I believe, the Universal Dracula, Bela Lugosi, is a vampire movie. It's like the vampire movie. The one that started it all. But vampires go more than just movies. They exist in comic books, video games, mythology, folk tales, novels, fiction, you know, in general, TV shows. There's a whole bunch of vampire TV shows. Buffy, True Blood. There's a couple others. I can't remember them off the top of my head. Yeah, I like vampires as a concept. Some of my favorite horror movies are vampire movies. Some of my favorite horror adjacent movies are vampire movies. I like the Twilight Saga. I've already talked about that. Those are vampires. I like The Lost Boys. I like From Dusk Till Dawn. That's a good one. But I don't really consider vampires all that scary. You know, for one, they can't even come in your house unless you invite them. So, like, that's a bitch. You know, just sit outside and wait for the sun to come up, Mr. Scary. Thank you. Usually they can be defeated by a wooden stake, a cross, holy water, which, you know, depending on your religion, holy water is just any, you know, water as long as you bless it. Sometimes garlic, but that's kind of fallen by the wayside lately. Sunlight almost always kills vampires. Sometimes it makes them sparkle, but that's another story for another day. Who doesn't want a hot, sparkly vampire glistening in the sun? I don't know. One of my favorite Dungeons and Dragons modules is Ravenloft, and I have Curse of Strahd, which is fucking fantastic, and that centers on vampires. I think in video games, vampires especially make good villains, especially in the Castlevania video games. I love the Castlevania video games, and the final boss is almost always a vampire. Well, I guess almost always. That's the theme of the series. Those are good. Those are pretty good. Um, I guess what I like about vampires is they are kind of scary. You know, they're hard. They actually kind of can be hard to kill because they're not stupid. You know, the holy water doesn't always work. The cross doesn't always work. And they're not going to just stand there with their arms open and let you stab them in the chest. You know, they're going to try to stop you. And they do have superhuman strength. But for the most part, they're pretty cool. I like vampires. And they drink your fucking blood. And they're gory as fuck. And often pretty fucking sexy. By most accounts. Alright, I have two more topics. I don't know if I'm going to get to the final topic or not because we're kind of getting low on time. I want to talk about murder mysteries. So murder mysteries aren't necessarily horror, but a lot of horror fans enjoy them. And murder mysteries can be a gateway to horror for some people, especially if they happen to enjoy true crime and they just want to know more about serial killers. So some of your popular murder mystery TV shows are Murder, She Wrote. You have the Poirot series of adaptations of the Agatha Christie stories. You have Psych, which is a comedy mystery show. And then you got a whole bunch of crime dramas, you know, like detective shows. Like, you got Columbo, you got CSI, you got NCIS, you got Bones, etc. The list goes on. I can get into a good murder mystery show if it's good and if the characters are interesting and the kills are good. You know, I liked Bones because Bones was pretty graphic. Bones was more horror than murder mystery, and I really liked that. Now, I'm not usually a fan of comedy, but I really enjoyed Psych. Psych was good. I enjoyed Psych. So as far as murder mystery type TV shows or detective shows go, I would say Psych is my favorite detective show of all time. Because it's not too serious, it's not too dark. And see, I don't really like murder mysteries or detective shows that much because a lot of times, I'm going to be honest, the shows are smarter than me. I can't fucking figure them out. And sometimes I'm like, that's not what I would have guessed. And so a lot of times that kind of pisses me off. Because it's like, well, fuck. Also, they can be pretty heavy. Like NCIS and CSI are pretty fucking heavy. Bones got too heavy for me, so I had to tap out. I don't tend to like realistic depictions of death and murder, especially ones like Bones that are based on true stories, allegedly. I don't enjoy those. I do not enjoy NCIS or CSI at all. My mom made me watch Murder, She Wrote when I was a kid because she was obsessed with it and Columbo. So I've seen more episodes of Murder, She Wrote and Columbo than I'll ever fucking care to because I am not a fan of those. Murder mysteries do tend to be, like I said, kind of like gateways to horror. They're not always, like, scary, but there's usually, like, a killer on the loose, and you don't know who's going to die next, and you don't know who the killer's going to be. Now, some early slasher movies were kind of reminiscent of murder mysteries in that you didn't know who the killer was, and you didn't know what their motivation was going to be, or why they were killing. So they had elements of that in them, which in that context I do enjoy to an extent. Now I do prefer the slasher movie where you know who the killer is and you're on the lookout for him. So I can enjoy the the whodunit aspect of some of the slashers, but they're not my favorite ones. Now, I've already mentioned Agatha Christie. I have read a bunch of Agatha Christie books. I actually like her books. I don't like film or TV adaptations of her books. And a lot of that is the pacing is off, especially because they're usually made for TV. So they have to work in commercial breaks, which means you have unnecessary recaps, because you're coming back from a commercial break and you maybe forgot what happened 3 minutes ago before the commercial break. So I don't enjoy the pacing of them. Also, they're usually not very well acted, so it takes me out of the story. Because when I'm reading a book, there is no acting, it's just the writing, and usually Agatha Christie's writing is pretty damn good. Now, there's the elephant in the room, and I haven't talked about it on purpose. Sherlock Holmes can suck a dick. I hate Sherlock Holmes. Thank you very much. And I don't care if he's sucking Watson's dick or his grandma's cock. I don't care. I hate Sherlock Holmes. Fuck off. I'm not a fan of Sherlock Holmes. My God, this cat is very needy. So say hello to Buddy. He has food. I gave him food before I came out here, so he's not hungry. Maybe he just wants some attention. He sees me talking to the piece of plastic, and he's like, "Hey, I'm not plastic. Love me." So, hello, Buddykins. Say hi to the audience. Okay, I have to move you now. You're getting in the way of my laptop. So, like I said, I could enjoy a good murder mystery or a detective show or story. Usually I prefer them if they're in book form. All right, you have to move. You have to move. You have to move. You're getting annoying. I'm sorry. Go. I guess it just depends. If it's too heavy, I don't enjoy it. Especially if it's like something where, main characters are going to die. Which is what happens a lot in Bones. I kind of, spoilers. When Sweets died, I was like, fuck this show. I'm not watching anymore. Especially how he died. I was like, nope, fuck off. I'm done. This is why I stopped watching The Walking Dead. I'm not going to say which character it was, but one of my favorite characters died. That was the last episode I watched, and I will never watch another episode of The Walking Dead because I was like, nope, I'm done. Fuck off. And they had already killed two characters up to that point previously that I was like, fuck you. But I kept watching. But when that character died, I was like, nope, I'm not watching. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not getting, attached to these characters just to watch them die horrible fucking deaths. Especially when it's characters you're supposed to like. You know what I mean? You want to kill the governor? Kill him, fucking rip his guts out, rip his face off. I'm good with that. But if you're gonna kill the main characters from the very beginning, fuck you, I'm done. I was going to talk about Doom, the video game series, but I think that would take more than 12 minutes, and I want to keep these videos under 60 minutes if I can. So I guess we're at the episode where I go into the, updates and housekeeping and stuff. So I gotta go. What the hell? Cat's getting a little annoying. He wants to go outside. He's annoying because he's asking me to let him out. And he doesn't understand that he's not going out right now. It's winter time. You go outside, you get wet and cold, and you don't need that. So when I started doing horror trans, I was doing 5 reviews on the weekend and 5 reviews midweek, and that was 10 videos, 10 movies a week. But that was too much. I was burning through my list of movies too quickly. I took the month of December off, where I didn't review any movies, so I could watch a bunch of movies. And then I realized that I don't want to have to do that every few months, to catch up. So once I got a good solid list of backlogs to review, I decided let's slow it down. So I went to 2 a week or 4 a week, two on the weekend, 2 during the week, and I realized that just wasn't enough. So I decided the middle ground is 6. I'll do 3 on the weekend and 3 during the week, and I kind of did 3 last week where I did the Fear Street movies. I did all 3 of them, but I did them as one video. And I did that on purpose because I kind of consider Fear Street like one continuous story. And I didn't want to talk about the individual movies because they're all good. So, on my other channels, I don't really have anything new coming up. I'm just going to keep going as planned. My book, Goldfish on the Mountain, is still available on Amazon. You can check that out. It's a horror thriller about 2 guys who kidnap a woman and fuck her up. They want to kill her, but they want to torture her first. And there's a side quest about another woman that one of the guys is obsessed with, who is in a mental health facility, and he's trying to rescue her from the mental health facility. And that's kind of an interesting subplot, I think. I think people will enjoy it if they read it. It's on Amazon. You can get it on Amazon Unlimited if you want to read it for free, if you have that. It's called Goldfish on the Mountain. And that's everything I have for this week. I am going to do a commentary for the Patreon. I haven't decided what film I'm going to do, but I'm going to do it today. And I'm going to start doing once a week, maybe more often if I decide. But at least once a week, I'm going to do a live reaction video where I watch a horror movie live and let you watch me react to it. Last week, I did Hereditary. So if you want to watch me have a stroke, go watch that video. Because fuck Hereditary. God damn it. That movie can just fuck off. That movie fucked me up. Do not let that be an indicator of my review. Because just because it scared the living fucking shit out of me doesn't mean I didn't enjoy it. I have thoughts. But I think I'm going to have to put the cat in the bedroom because he is getting really annoying right now. All right, that's all I have for today. I'll see you next week. Stay cool.